Imagine cities built of stone rising above the jungle canopy, pyramids taller than cathedrals, carved with secrets nobody could read for 1,000 years. Then imagine those cities abandoned, swallowed by forest, forgotten. Until one day, explorers hack through vines and find temples still standing. Tonight, the Maya, a civilization that invented zero, predicted eclipses, then vanished into silence. Let me take you to Mesoamerica around 2000 BC, to the region we now call southern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador. This is tropical lowland, dense jungle, seasonal rains, and challenging terrain for building a civilization. But it's here, in these unlikely conditions, that one of humanity's most sophisticated cultures will emerge: the Maya. The earliest Maya weren't building pyramids yet. They were farmers, cultivating maize, beans, and squash, using slash-and-burn agriculture. They cleared forest patches, burned the vegetation to fertilize the soil, planted crops, then moved on when the soil depleted after a few years. This shifting cultivation supported small villages scattered across the landscape. Simple wooden houses with thatched roofs, family compounds, modest lives tied to agricultural cycles. But something was changing. Around 1000 BC, some villages were growing larger, becoming more permanent. Population was increasing. Social complexity was developing. Some people had more status than others: leaders, priests, skilled craftsmen. The egalitarian farming villages were transforming into stratified societies with hierarchies, specialized roles, accumulating knowledge. Religion was the binding force. The Maya believed the world was alive with spirits, in rivers, mountains, trees, animals, the sky itself. Everything had spiritual dimension. The gods controlled rain, fertility, the sun's movement, the growth of crops. Pleasing the gods meant survival. Angering them meant disaster. This worldview would shape everything the Maya built, everything they created. Around 800 BC, the Maya began developing something extraordinary: a writing system. Not simple pictographs like many early writing systems, but sophisticated hieroglyphics capable of recording complex information. Sounds, syllables, whole words, all could be written. This meant history could be preserved, astronomical observations recorded, religious texts transmitted. Writing transformed the Maya from a prehistoric culture to a historical civilization. The astronomy came next, or perhaps developed simultaneously with writing. The Maya observed the sky obsessively. They tracked the sun's annual journey, the moon's phases, the movements of Venus and other planets. They discovered mathematical patterns in celestial movements and learned to predict them with astonishing accuracy. This wasn't just scientific curiosity. The gods lived in the sky, and understanding celestial patterns meant understanding divine will. Mathematics developed to support astronomy. The Maya created a sophisticated number system using only 3 symbols: a dot for 1, a bar for 5, and a shell symbol for 0. 0. Think about that. The concept of 0 as a placeholder and actual number, independently invented by the Maya around the same time India developed it, centuries before Europe would adopt it. This mathematical sophistication enabled complex calculations, precise calendars, astronomical predictions. The calendars were intricate. The Maya didn't use just one calendar. They used several simultaneously. The Tzolk'in, a 260-day sacred calendar used for divination and ritual. The Hab, a 365-day solar calendar tracking seasons. The Long Count, measuring time from a mythological creation date in what we'd call 3114 BC. These calendars interlocked, creating cycles within cycles, patterns that wouldn't repeat for thousands of years. Around 400 BC, the first true cities began emerging. El Mirador, in what's now Guatemala, grew enormous. Massive pyramids, elaborate complexes, tens of thousands of residents. This wasn't a village anymore. This was urban civilization, centralized power, monumental architecture. The pre-classic period of Maya civilization had begun, setting the stage for the classic period's glories. The cities that would become most famous were establishing themselves. Tikal, which would eventually house 100,000 people, was founded around 400 BC. Copan, in modern Honduras, was settled around 100 BC. These cities weren't isolated. They were connected through trade networks, shared religious practices, political relationships, and sometimes warfare. A civilization was coalescing across Mesoamerica. The Maya weren't alone in the region. The Olmec civilization had preceded them, developing many foundations: pyramid building, ballgame traditions, astronomical observation, that the Maya would inherit and elaborate. The Zapotec were building Monte Alban. The Teotihuacan would later become a massive metropolis, influencing the entire region. Mesoamerica was a complex cultural landscape where ideas, goods, and people moved and mixed. But the Maya were developing distinctive characteristics. Their hieroglyphic writing was becoming the most sophisticated in the Americas. Their astronomical observations were becoming unprecedentedly precise. Their architectural style, steep pyramids with temples on top, corbel arch construction, intricate stone carving, was becoming recognizably Maya. They were creating something unique. The social structure was becoming rigidly hierarchical. At the top, the Aja, the king or lord, who claimed divine ancestry and ruled with absolute authority. Below him, the nobility, administrators, priests, military leaders. Below them, skilled craftsmen, merchants, soldiers. At the bottom, farmers and laborers who comprised the vast majority of the population. This hierarchy was justified religiously and maintained through a combination of genuine belief, practical benefits, and, when necessary, force. Religion permeated every aspect of life. The Maya cosmos had three levels: the heavens above, the earth in the middle, the underworld, Xibalba, below. Each level had its gods, its characteristics, its significance. The world tree, the Ceiba, connected all three levels: its roots in the underworld, its trunk on earth, its branches in heaven. This vertical cosmology shaped how the Maya oriented their cities, their temples, their lives. Sacrifice was central to Maya religion, though not initially in the way that would later develop. Early sacrifices were offerings: food, incense, precious objects thrown into sacred cenotes, natural sinkholes, or buried in temple foundations. The gods gave humans life. Humans reciprocated by giving the gods sustenance. This reciprocal relationship maintained cosmic balance, kept the sun rising, the rains coming, the world functioning. By the time Christ was being born in the Middle East, the Maya civilization was well established in Central America. Cities were growing, pyramids were rising, hieroglyphs were being carved, the calendar was recording history. The Maya were on the verge of their greatest flourishing, the classic period that would produce their most magnificent cities, most sophisticated achievements, most enduring monuments. The foundation was laid. The agricultural surplus supported specialists who didn't farm: architects, astronomers, scribes, artists, priests. The writing system preserved knowledge and allowed complex administration. The mathematics enabled architectural precision and astronomical calculation. The religious worldview provided meaning, motivation, cohesion. The political structure organized society and coordinated massive construction projects.
Everything was ready for the Maya to build their stone mountains, to create cities that would awe everyone who saw them, to develop a civilization so sophisticated that when Europeans finally encountered it,
They couldn't believe indigenous Americans had created something so advanced. The stage was set for the classic period, for the golden age, for the time when Maya civilization would reach its absolute peak. The pyramids were about to rise. The great cities were about to flourish. The astronomers were about to make discoveries that would remain accurate for millennia. The artists were about to create carvings of breathtaking beauty. The kings were about to commission monuments that would outlast their dynasties by 1,000 years. This is where the story really begins. Not with ruins and mysteries, but with ambition and achievement, with human capability pushed to extraordinary heights, with a civilization creating wonders in challenging conditions through ingenuity, dedication, and collective effort. The Maya were about to show what humans could accomplish. And what we're about to witness is nothing less than one of humanity's great civilizations in its prime. The Classic period, roughly 250 to 900 AD, is when Maya civilization explodes into its full glory. This is when the great cities reach their maximum size and sophistication. This is when the pyramids rise highest, when the carvings become most elaborate, when political power reaches its zenith. This is the Maya at their absolute peak. Picture Tikal at its height around 700 AD. The city sprawls across miles of jungle, home to perhaps 100,000 people. 6 massive pyramids dominate the landscape, the tallest rising 65 meters, over 200 feet into the sky. These aren't solid stone masses, they're layered constructions built over centuries, each new king adding to what previous kings built, creating architectural palimpsests that encode political history in stone. The construction technique is remarkable. The Maya don't have metal tools, no iron, no bronze for cutting stone. They use stone tools to quarry limestone blocks, shape them through patient pecking and grinding, transport them to construction sites using human labor and log rollers, then fit them together with extraordinary precision. No mortar in the finest work. Stones cut so exactly, they lock together through friction and weight alone. The pyramids aren't built all at once. A king might begin construction, die before completion, and his successor finishes the work, often modifying the design. Sometimes a pyramid is deliberately buried inside a larger pyramid, creating a nested structure like Russian dolls. Archaeologists tunneling into pyramids often discover complete earlier temples preserved inside later constructions. Temple 1 at Tikal is the funerary monument of Jasar Chan Kawil I, who died around 734 AD. The pyramid rises in 9 terraces, 9 like the 9 levels of the Maya underworld, supporting a temple at the summit. The king's tomb lies deep inside the pyramid, surrounded by riches, jade ornaments, pottery, shells, pearls. The pyramid is simultaneously monument, tomb, and symbolic mountain connecting earth to heaven. The architecture uses the corbel arch, a distinctive Maya technique. Instead of true arches with keystones, Maya builders create archways by stacking stones progressively inward until they meet at the top. This limits the width of interior spaces, but creates the characteristic Maya arch that appears throughout their buildings. The technique is simple but effective, allowing them to create soaring interior spaces without advanced engineering. The exteriors are plastered and painted. We see grey limestone ruins today, but originally, these buildings blazed with color: red, white, blue, yellow. The plaster was mixed with ground limestone, creating a smooth surface that artists covered with murals depicting gods, kings, battles, rituals. The visual impact of a newly completed Maya city must have been stunning. Pyramids painted bright red, temples decorated with elaborate stucco sculptures, plazas gleaming white. The city planning shows sophisticated urban design. Tikal's core covers about 16 square kilometers, with pyramids, palaces, administrative buildings, plazas, ball courts, residential areas, causeways connecting different zones. The layout isn't random. Major structures align with astronomical phenomena, solstices, equinoxes, the movements of Venus. The city is a giant astronomical instrument oriented to the cosmos. The ball courts are particularly fascinating. These eye-shaped playing fields host games that are simultaneously sport and ritual. Two teams compete to keep a heavy rubber ball in play without using hands or feet, only hips, knees, and elbows. The game has deep religious significance, possibly representing the cosmic battle between life and death, light and darkness. The stakes are high. In some cases, losing team members are sacrificed to the gods. The ball courts have remarkable acoustics. Clap your hands at one end, and people at the other end, 100 feet away, hear it clearly. Speak normally, and your voice carries across the entire court. This isn't accidental. The Maya designed these acoustic properties, possibly to make announcements, possibly for ritual purposes, possibly both. The engineering knowledge required to create these acoustic effects is impressive. Copan, in modern Honduras, is famous for its hieroglyphic stairway, the longest pre-Columbian text in the Americas. 63 steps, each carved with hieroglyphs telling the history of Copan's dynasty over 350 years. Over 2,200 individual glyphs recording kings, battles, rituals, astronomical events. The stairway is a book in stone, history made permanent, designed to last forever. The carving quality at Copan is extraordinary. Artists created three-dimensional sculptures that seem almost alive. Kings in elaborate costume, gods in terrifying aspect, captives in positions of submission. The level of detail is incredible. Individual feathers on headdresses, teeth in grimacing mouths, textile patterns on clothing. These aren't primitive carvings. These are artworks that would impress in any era. Palenque, in southern Mexico, shows different architectural style, more elegant, more delicate than the massive solidity of Tikal. The Temple of Inscriptions houses the tomb of Kinich Janab Pakal, who ruled for 68 years in the 7th century. Inside the pyramid, a stairway descends to a burial chamber where Pakal's sarcophagus sits, covered with a carved lid showing the king falling into the underworld's jaws. The Palenque Palace is a complex of buildings around courtyards, featuring a unique 4-story tower, possibly an astronomical observatory, possibly a watchtower, possibly both. The interior rooms have delicate stucco sculptures, carved panels telling dynastic history, architectural innovation showing continued development of construction techniques. The Maya cities aren't isolated. They're connected by sakbiob, raised white limestone roads, sometimes dozens of kilometers long, connecting ceremonial centers. These roads allowed movement during rainy season, when ground would be muddy, facilitated trade, enabled quick military movement. The longest known sakbe runs 100 kilometers from Kobar to Yaxuna. Water management was crucial. The Maya regions have seasonal rainfall, abundant during wet season, scarce during dry months. Cities needed water storage. They built reservoirs, cisterns, channels directing water flow. At Tikal, the reservoirs could hold enough water to supply the city through dry season. This hydraulic engineering was essential for supporting large urban populations. The cities weren't independent entities, but parts of a complex political landscape. Some cities were dominant powers. Calakmul and Tikal were superpower rivals for centuries, each leading alliances of smaller cities, fighting proxy wars through subject states. Other cities, like Copan or Palenque, were regional powers with their own spheres of influence. The political geography was dynamic, constantly shifting through marriage alliances, military conquests, vassal relationships. Kings commissioned monuments celebrating themselves. Stelae, tall stone slabs, were erected in plazas, carved with the king's image and hieroglyphic text recording his achievements. Birth date, accession date, military victories, captives taken, rituals performed, all preserved in stone. These monuments were propaganda, self-aggrandizement, and genuine historical record simultaneously. The elite lived in palaces near the city centers, multi-room stone buildings with elaborate decoration. The common people lived in simpler structures on the city's periphery, wooden houses with thatched roofs built on low stone platforms. The archaeological record preserves the stone structures, but the wooden houses are gone, creating a skewed picture where we see the elite's architecture, but not the majority's dwellings. The artistry extended beyond architecture. Maya painted pottery shows remarkable skill. Scenes from mythology, courtly life, warfare, all rendered in sophisticated compositions with multiple figures, complex action, readable narratives. The artists signed some pots, indicating individual recognition and pride in craftsmanship. Jade was the most precious material, more valuable than gold. The Maya carved jade into jewelry, masks, figurines, inlays for teeth. The translucent green stone symbolized life, fertility, water, maize. Jade objects were royal treasures, buried with kings, offered to gods, given as diplomatic gifts between courts. Cacao, chocolate, was currency and luxury. Cacao beans were literally money, standardized value, used in trade, hoarded by the wealthy. The chocolate drink, flavored with chili and other spices, was consumed by elites during ceremonies and celebrations. The common people rarely, if ever, tasted chocolate. It was too valuable. The Maya were creating something unprecedented. Urban civilization in tropical rainforest, sophisticated culture without metal tools, complex writing in the pre-Columbian Americas, astronomical knowledge that wouldn't be matched for centuries. They were proving that human ingenuity could overcome environmental challenges, that civilization could flourish in seemingly unsuitable conditions. But they were also creating vulnerabilities. The dense populations required constant agricultural surplus. The monumental construction consumed enormous resources and labor. The warfare between cities was intensifying. The environmental impact of supporting large populations in fragile tropical ecosystems was accumulating. Success contained the seeds of eventual crisis. But that crisis is still centuries away. For now, the Maya are at their height, building their stone mountains, carving their histories, reaching toward the gods through architecture and art and astronomical knowledge. To understand Maya civilization, you must understand the Kuhul Ajah, the Divine Lord. This wasn't just political leadership. The king was semi-divine, a living connection between humans and gods, responsible for maintaining cosmic order. His bloodline supposedly descended from gods. His person was sacred. His actions affected the entire universe. The king's role was both political and religious, because the Maya didn't separate these categories. Governing the city-state meant performing the rituals that kept the sun rising, the rain falling, the cosmos balanced. Military success, agricultural abundance, and spiritual potency were interconnected. A weak king meant not just political instability, but cosmic disaster. Accession ceremonies were elaborate. The new king would perform bloodletting, piercing his tongue or penis with a stingray spine or obsidian blade, collecting the blood on bark paper, burning it to send the offering to the gods. This wasn't cruelty. This was the king demonstrating his worthiness, his willingness to sacrifice for his people, his connection to divine power. The pain was proof of sincerity. The bloodletting could be extreme. Some rituals required the king to pass a rope with thorns through his pierced tongue repeatedly. The altered state from blood loss and pain might induce visions, which were interpreted as communications with gods or ancestors. The king's suffering validated his rule, showed his devotion, maintained the cosmic contract between humans and deities. Royal women also performed bloodletting, sometimes publicly. A famous lintel from Yaxchilan shows Lady Kabal Suk pulling a thorned rope through her pierced tongue, while her husband, the king Shield Jaguar, watches. She's having a vision, a serpent rising from the blood-soaked paper, manifesting the ancestors. This is the queen fulfilling her role in the cosmic order. The elaborate costumes royal wore weren't just decoration. They were laden with symbolism. Quetzal feathers from the birds' long tail plumes, which could only be harvested from living birds and were fantastically valuable. Jaguar pelts, symbolizing power and connection to the underworld. Jade ornaments representing life and fertility. Shell decorations from distant oceans. Each element carried meaning, told observers about the wearer's status, connections, spiritual power. The headdresses were architectural marvels themselves, towering assemblies of feathers, wood, jade, obsidian, sometimes weighing dozens of pounds. Kings are depicted in carvings wearing these massive headdresses, which required tremendous neck strength to support. The headdresses made kings appear larger, more imposing, more godlike. Practical? No. Symbolically powerful? Absolutely. The royal court was complex. Scribes recorded history, managed administration, kept astronomical records. Artists created the carvings, paintings, pottery that glorified the king. Priests performed rituals, interpreted omens, advised on auspicious dates for important actions. Warriors provided military power. Each had status derived from proximity to the king, from specialized knowledge or skills. Warfare was both political and ritual. Cities fought for territory, resources, control of trade routes, standard political economic motivations. But warfare also had religious dimensions. Capturing enemy nobles for sacrifice pleased the gods. Demonstrating martial power validated the king's divine mandate. Battle itself was ritualized, with specific protocols, symbolic significance beyond mere violence. The weapons were sophisticated despite being made from stone, wood, and obsidian. The maquahuitl was a wooden sword embedded with obsidian blades, sharper than steel, capable of decapitating a horse, as horrified Spanish conquistadors would later report. Spears with obsidian points. Uplotls, spear throwers that extended range and power. Axes and clubs for close combat. Protection came from cotton armor, padded thick enough to stop obsidian blades, and shields decorated with family or city symbols. Captives taken in battle met various fates. High-status prisoners might be kept for years, displayed as trophies, sometimes given certain privileges before eventual sacrifice. Lower-status captives might be enslaved, put to work on construction projects or in elite households. The most important captives were sacrificed during major ceremonies, their deaths feeding the gods, maintaining cosmic balance. The sacrifices could be brutal.
decapitation, heart extraction, arrow sacrifice, where the victim was tied to a frame and shot with arrows. But these weren't random cruelty. They were religious ritual, performed according to strict protocols, designed to serve specific purposes. The Maya believed the universe required these offerings. The gods had sacrificed themselves to create humans. Humans reciprocated by nourishing the gods with blood. We need to be careful not to judge by modern standards, while also not romanticizing. Yes, human sacrifice is horrifying to us.
But the Maya genuinely believed it was necessary. They weren't sadists. They were devout people, fulfilling what they saw as cosmic obligations. Understanding their worldview doesn't require approving it, but it does require taking it seriously on its own terms. The trade networks were extensive. Obsidian from volcanic highlands traveled hundreds of miles to lowland cities. Jade from the Motagua Valley in Guatemala was traded throughout Mesoamerica. Shells from Pacific and Caribbean coasts reached inland cities. Cacao from tropical lowlands went to highland regions. Long-distance trade created economic interdependence and cultural exchange. Merchants were a distinct class, not nobility, but not common farmers either. They traveled dangerous routes, knew multiple languages, carried valuable goods, served as informal diplomats and spies. Some merchant families became wealthy enough to rival minor nobles. The trade they facilitated connected distant regions, spread innovations, distributed resources. Cacao was particularly important. The beans were currency, but chocolate drink was also consumed ritually and socially by elites. The preparation was elaborate, grinding roasted beans, mixing with water, aerating by pouring between vessels to create foam, sometimes flavored with vanilla, chili, or other spices. The drink was associated with elite status, religious ceremony, diplomatic exchanges. Jade carving reached extraordinary sophistication. Artisans created impossibly delicate objects: hollow jade beads, intricate carved pendants, mosaic masks made from hundreds of tiny jade pieces. The hardness of jade made carving difficult, requiring patience, skill, probably sand as abrasive and wooden or bone tools. A single jade object might represent years of work. The Maya also worked with obsidian, creating not just weapons, but beautiful objects. Obsidian mirrors, polished to reflective perfection. Ceremonial knives with elaborate handles. Eccentric flints. Obsidian flaked into fantastic shapes, some so delicate they couldn't possibly be functional. Pure artistry in stone. These eccentrics were buried in caches under temples or placed in royal tombs. Writing was power. Literacy was restricted to elites, royalty, high nobility, scribes. The ability to read and write hieroglyphs marked you as educated, connected to sacred knowledge. Scribes held respected positions, their skill preserving history, enabling administration, recording astronomical observations. Some scribes signed their work, indicating pride in craftsmanship and individual recognition. The texts recorded multiple subjects: king lists and genealogies establishing legitimacy, military victories celebrating conquest, astronomical events marking important dates, dedication texts for buildings, historical narratives explaining dynastic changes. These weren't dry records. They were propaganda, justification, memory, all intertwined. The Maya wrote their version of history into stone, creating the narrative they wanted remembered. Women's roles were complex and sometimes powerful. Most royal succession was patrilineal, king to son, but women could rule in unusual circumstances. Some women served as regents for young sons, Others ruled in their own right, like the famous Lady of Tikal, who governed during political crisis. Queens had important ritual roles, performed bloodletting, commissioned monuments. Common women's lives are less visible in the record, but archaeology provides clues. They ground corn daily, an activity that shaped their skeletal structure. Archaeologists can identify women by the specific wear patterns on arm and leg bones from hours of grinding. They wove textiles, though the textiles themselves are long gone. They prepared food, raised children, maintained households. Their labor was essential, but largely unrecorded. Children were welcomed and valued, but also faced high mortality. Perhaps 40 to 50% died before age 5 from disease, malnutrition, accidents. Those who survived were gradually integrated into adult work. Children helped in fields, carried water, watched younger siblings. Elite children received education, reading, writing, history, religious knowledge. Common children learned through working alongside parents. The social hierarchy was rigid, but not absolute. Talented commoners might rise through military success, scribal skill, or craft mastery. Elite status could be lost through political defeat or scandal. There was some social mobility, though most people lived and died in the class they were born into. The system was maintained through ideology, divine mandate, cosmic order, and practicality, military force when necessary. This was the society building the stone mountains, carving the histories, maintaining the cosmic balance through blood and stone and mathematical precision. Complex, sophisticated, capable of great beauty and terrible violence, devoted to gods who demanded sacrifice, organized in rigid hierarchies justified by theological worldview. The Maya at their height, before the signs of trouble began appearing. The Maya were obsessed with time. Not time in our casual, modern sense, appointments, schedules, the hours ticking toward weekend. Time in its cosmic dimension, the great cycles that measured the universe's breathing, the patterns that connected past, present, and future in an eternal mathematical dance. Their mathematical system was elegant. 3 symbols, a dot for 1, a bar for 5, a shell for 0. With just these, they could write any number. The system was vigesimal, base 20, not our base 10, because humans have 20 fingers and toes. Units, 20s, 400s, 8,000s. The positions increasing by powers of 20 as you moved up the positional notation. 0 was crucial. Without 0, positional notation doesn't work properly. The Maya understood 0 both as placeholder, making 20 different from 2, and as mathematical concept, a number in its own right. They developed this independently from the Old World, proof that mathematical insight isn't culturally specific, but emerges from logical necessity regardless of cultural context. The mathematics enabled astronomy. The Maya tracked Venus with precision that wouldn't be matched in Europe until the telescope. They knew Venus's synodic period, the cycle of its appearances and disappearances relative to Earth, to within hours over the 584-day cycle. They recorded these observations over generations, compiled them into tables, used them to predict Venus's future positions. Why track Venus so carefully? Because Venus was associated with warfare and political power. The planet's appearances marked auspicious times for military campaigns. Kings scheduled battles according to Venus's position. The astronomy wasn't just science, it was practical knowledge for earthly power, divine guidance made mathematically calculable. The solar and lunar eclipses were predictable. The Maya knew the Saros cycle, the 223-month pattern after which eclipses repeat. They could predict when eclipses would occur, warn populations, perform protective rituals. This knowledge demonstrated the priest's power, validated the cosmic order the kings claimed to maintain, reassured people that the apparent disruption of natural order was temporary and controllable. The calendars interlocked in complex ways. The Zolkin 260-day calendar meshed with the Hab 365-day calendar to create the calendar round, a 52-year cycle when both calendars returned to their starting positions simultaneously. Every 52 years was a dangerous transition, marked by fire ceremonies and renewal rituals. The old fire was extinguished, a new fire kindled, symbolizing the world's rebirth. But the long count calendar measured vaster time. Starting from a mythological creation date, corresponding to August 11th, 3114 BC in our calendar, the long count recorded days in a system that could track millennia. The Maya thought in terms of baktuns, periods of 144,000 days, about 394 years. 13 baktuns completed a great cycle of about 5,125 years. The famous 2012 Maya calendar end was just one great cycle ending and another beginning. Not apocalypse, just cyclical renewal. The astronomical observations required patient dedication over generations. A single astronomer couldn't track Venus through enough cycles to discover its long-term patterns. Knowledge had to be accumulated, recorded, transmitted across generations. This required institutional continuity. Observatories, trained observers, records kept and consulted, intellectual tradition maintained over centuries. Where did they observe? Some temples might have served as observatories. The Caracol at Chichen Itza is sometimes called an observatory, though this is debated. More likely, observations were made from plaza platforms or pyramid tops, using the surrounding architecture as sighting markers. The precise alignment of buildings with astronomical events suggests architecture itself was part of the observation system. The Maya understood that cosmology and theology were inseparable. The cosmos wasn't just physical mechanics, it was the realm of gods, the arena of sacred drama. The sun's daily journey was a god traveling through the underworld at night, battling darkness, emerging victorious each dawn. The moon's phases were a goddess's transformation. Venus's movements were a god's military campaigns. The underworld, Xibalba, was a crucial part of cosmology. The hero twins' journey to Xibalba, recorded in the Popol Vuh, though this text was written down after the Spanish conquest, tells of twin brothers who journey to the underworld, defeat the death gods through trickery, and are transformed into the sun and moon. This myth encoded deep truths about death, rebirth, cosmic cycles, the triumph of life over death. The world tree, the Seba, connected the three cosmic levels. Its roots reached into Xibalba. Its trunk existed in our world. Its branches extended into the 13 levels of heaven. The king was sometimes depicted as the world tree, symbolically connecting all cosmic levels, maintaining the structure of reality through his person and his rituals. The directional cosmology was equally important. Each of the 4 cardinal directions had its color, its gods, its qualities. East was red, associated with sunrise and birth. West was black, associated with sunset and death. North was white, linked to ancestors. South was yellow, connected to fertility. The center, where the world tree stood, was green, the color of maize and life. This cosmology shaped city planning. Buildings aligned to cardinal directions. Colors used in decoration followed directional associations. Rituals performed in specific locations according to their directional significance. The physical city was a map of the cosmos, allowing humans to interact with divine geography, to participate in maintaining universal order. The ceremonial year followed agricultural and astronomical cycles. Planting time required rituals asking rain gods for moisture. Harvest time meant Thanksgiving ceremonies. Solstices and equinoxes marked major celebrations. The intersection of agricultural necessity, astronomical observation, and religious devotion created a calendar of constant ritual activity. Divination was crucial for decision-making. The Zolkin calendar provided a framework for divination. Each of the 260 days had specific qualities, favorable or unfavorable for different activities. Priests consulted the calendar before important actions. Marriage dates, accession dates, building dedications, military campaigns, all scheduled according to calendrical divination. The priests who managed this complex knowledge system were powerful. They didn't just perform rituals, they were intellectuals, maintaining and developing the mathematical, astronomical, and calendrical knowledge that undergirded Maya civilization. Some were likely skeptical about the religious framework, while recognizing its social utility. Others were genuine believers. Probably most were some combination, accepting the broad framework while recognizing human elements in its details. The knowledge was partly recorded in books, codices made from bark paper, folded accordion style, painted with hieroglyphs and images. These books contained astronomical tables, divination guides, ritual instructions, historical records. Hundreds or thousands must have existed. Almost all were destroyed by the Spanish. Only 4 Maya codices survived: the Dresden, Madrid, Paris, and Grolier codices, giving us glimpses of the knowledge system that once existed. What was lost when the codices burned is incalculable. Astronomical observations spanning centuries, mathematical treatises, historical records, medical knowledge, agricultural wisdom, literary works. The destruction of the Maya books ranks among history's great intellectual catastrophes, comparable to the burning of the Library of Alexandria. We can only imagine what we might have learned if those books survived. But some knowledge was carved in stone, surviving the conquest. The astronomical alignments of buildings can still be measured. The hieroglyphic texts on monuments can now be read, thanks to 20th century breakthroughs in decipherment. The mathematical sophistication is evident in architectural precision. The cosmos the Maya mapped is still visible in the sky, the same stars and planets they watched still moving in the patterns they recorded. The Maya achieved something remarkable: sophisticated astronomical knowledge without telescopes, complex mathematics without electronic calculators, precise calendrical systems through patient observation and logical deduction. They proved that human intelligence, given time and cultural support, can unravel universal patterns, can find order in apparent chaos, can use mathematics and observation to predict the future with startling accuracy. Their intellectual achievements deserve recognition alongside the greatest scientific accomplishments of any civilization. By the 8th century AD, Maya civilization had reached its peak. The cities were largest, most populous, most elaborately developed. The art was most sophisticated, the political systems most complex. Everything seemed to be going magnificently. But underneath the surface, problems were accumulating. Problems that would eventually trigger catastrophic collapse. Population had grown enormously. Tikal housed perhaps 100,000 people. The surrounding countryside was densely settled, farming every available plot. The total Maya population in the Classic period lowlands might have exceeded 10 million people. This was an impressive achievement, supporting millions in tropical rainforest without metal tools, without draft animals, without the wheel for transportation. But the environmental cost was mounting. The Maya practiced slash-and-burn agriculture, clearing forest, burning vegetation, planting crops for a few years until soil depleted, then moving on to clear new forest. This worked fine when population was low and there was plenty of forest. But as population increased, the rotation period shortened. Forest couldn't regenerate properly. Soil quality declined. The Maya tried intensification, building terraces to prevent erosion, creating raised fields in wetlands, planting trees to restore soil fertility. These techniques helped, but couldn't fully compensate for the fundamental problem: too many people on limited land, using technology that degraded soil faster than natural processes could restore it. Deforestation accelerated. Trees were cut not just for agriculture, but for other purposes. Lime plaster for buildings required burning limestone at high temperatures, consuming enormous quantities of wood. One estimate suggests that plastering the buildings at a single Maya city required deforesting several square miles of forest. Multiply this across dozens of cities, centuries of construction, and the cumulative impact becomes staggering. The deforestation had cascading effects. Without tree roots holding soil, erosion increased. Eroded soil washed into rivers and reservoirs, reducing water storage capacity. Less forest meant less rainfall. Forests generate moisture through transpiration, and removing them reduces local precipitation. The landscape was becoming less productive, less capable of supporting the population it had enabled. Climate change made everything worse. Paleoclimate research shows the 8th and 9th centuries experienced severe droughts in the Maya region. These weren't ordinary dry seasons. These were multi-year droughts that drastically reduced rainfall. Lake sediment cores show evidence of major dry periods around 7760, 810, and 860 AD, precisely when Maya cities were beginning to collapse. The drought's timing was catastrophic. The Maya had developed civilization during favorable climate conditions. The cities, the agricultural systems, the whole social structure was calibrated for normal rainfall patterns. When the climate shifted and droughts intensified, the systems couldn't adapt quickly enough. Agricultural failure followed. Food shortages developed. People went hungry. The political consequences were immediate. Maya kingship was based on the Ku'uhul Aja's ability to maintain cosmic order, which included ensuring agricultural fertility. When crops failed, despite the king's rituals, his legitimacy was questioned. If the king couldn't bring rain, why obey him? Faith in the political religious system began cracking. Warfare intensified. Archaeological evidence shows increasing violence in the terminal Classic period, roughly 800 to 900 AD. Fortifications appear around cities that previously hadn't needed them. Iconography increasingly emphasizes military themes. Skeletal remains show war wounds and violent deaths becoming more common. Cities were fighting over shrinking resources, arable land, water sources, trade routes. The warfare wasn't like modern wars with professional armies and clear objectives. Maya warfare was raids and ambushes, capturing enemies for sacrifice, burning outlying settlements. But the cumulative effect was devastating. Agricultural production was disrupted, trade was disrupted. The human toll from combat, plus the psychological stress of constant insecurity, plus the resource drain of military preparation, all weakened societies already stressed by environmental and agricultural problems. The trade networks began fracturing. Long-distance trade depended on security and reciprocal relationships. As warfare increased and political instability spread, trade became more dangerous and less profitable. Merchants stopped traveling to war zones. Cities lost access to imported goods, obsidian, jade, exotic feathers, cacao. The loss of trade goods undermined elite prestige and reduced economic complexity. Social tensions were rising. The elite continued building monuments and living in luxury, even as commoners faced food shortages. The disparity became harder to justify. Some evidence suggests social unrest, burned palaces, destroyed monuments, signs of elite being targeted by angry populations. The hierarchical system that had structured Maya society was losing legitimacy. The construction boom slowed. Dated monuments, stelae recording kings' achievements, become less frequent after 800 AD. Construction projects are left unfinished. This isn't just economic decline, it's loss of the ideology that motivated monument building. If people stopped believing in the divine kingship, why work on monuments glorifying kings? If the cosmic order was broken, why try to represent it in stone? Disease probably contributed, though evidence is scarce. Malnutrition makes people vulnerable to disease. Warfare spreads disease. Concentrated populations enable epidemics. We don't know what specific diseases struck the Maya, but it would be surprising if disease didn't play some role in the crisis. Weakened populations facing multiple stresses are vulnerable to pathogens. The Maya tried to respond. Some cities shifted to more defensive positions, abandoning open lowland areas for hilltops easier to defend. Some intensified agricultural practices, trying to squeeze more production from limited land. Some attempted political reforms, new alliances, different strategies. But these responses were too little, too late, addressing symptoms rather than fundamental causes. Individual cities fell at different times. Calakmul, one of the two great superpowers, collapsed around 830 AD. Tikal, the other superpower, persisted longer but was largely abandoned by 900 AD. Copan's last dated monument is from 822 AD. Palenque fades from the record around 800 AD. The great cities of the southern Maya lowlands, the heartland of classic Maya civilization, were dying. The collapse wasn't universal or simultaneous. Some areas continued longer than others. Northern cities like Chichen Itza and Uxmal actually flourished during the 9th and 10th centuries, possibly benefiting from refugees and resources fleeing the collapsing south. But the civilization was fundamentally transforming, and the change was catastrophic for the classic Maya centers. What makes the collapse mysterious is its thoroughness. These weren't just political changes or military defeats. The cities were physically abandoned. Populations dropped by 90% or more in some areas. The sophisticated culture, writing, monumental architecture, complex rituals, largely ceased. The Maya didn't disappear, but Maya civilization in its classic form effectively ended. The environmental degradation, the climate change, the warfare, the political instability, the social unrest, these weren't separate problems. They were interconnected, mutually reinforcing, creating a perfect storm of civilizational stress. Remove any one factor, and the Maya might have adapted. But facing all of them simultaneously, the classic Maya civilization couldn't survive. The final years must have been desperate. Imagine living in Tikal around 850 AD. The city your ancestors built, the magnificent pyramids and plazas, are still there, but fewer people remain. Many have left, seeking opportunity elsewhere. The remaining population can't maintain the infrastructure. Reservoirs aren't cleaned, buildings aren't repaired. The rituals continue, but with decreasing conviction. The king still performs ceremonies, but the rain doesn't come. The crops fail, and people are hungry. Then, one year, the decision is made. Whether formally or informally, people decide to leave. Some go to other cities, hoping conditions are better there. Some retreat to rural areas, returning to subsistence farming. Some head north to the Yucatan, where cities are still functioning. The migration isn't organized. It's desperate families making individual decisions to abandon homes their ancestors inhabited for centuries. The last person to leave Tikal, whoever they were, whenever exactly it happened, didn't know they were the last. They probably thought they'd return someday, when things improved. But things didn't improve. The city stood empty, silent, waiting for the jungle to reclaim it. The abandonment of the great Maya cities is one of archaeology's most haunting mysteries. Not a single catastrophic event, no volcanic eruption burying cities like Pompeii, no invading army putting everything to the sword, but a gradual, painful dissolution as people simply walked away from places their ancestors had built over centuries. The collapse happened city by city, region by region, across decades. Some cities were abandoned earlier, some later, but the pattern was consistent. The southern lowland cities, the heartland of classic Maya civilization, were depopulated by roughly 900 AD. The population didn't disappear entirely, but the urban centers housing tens of thousands were reduced to scattered small settlements or abandoned completely. Imagine Tikal in 950 AD, 50 years after its final monument was erected. The pyramids still stand, massive and impressive, but no one climbs them anymore. The plazas that once hosted thousands during festivals are empty, except for weeds pushing through the pavement. The palaces where kings lived are silent, their painted walls fading, their rooms home to birds and bats now. The ball courts host no games, the reservoirs are silting up. The city is becoming a ruin. The forest begins its work of reclamation. It starts subtly, vines climbing walls, seeds taking root in cracks between stones. Trees grow from the accumulated soil on plaza surfaces. Roots work their way into buildings, slowly prying stones apart. Rain washes away plaster, exposing the limestone beneath to weathering. Without human maintenance, tropical nature is patient but relentless. Within a generation, the transformation is dramatic. Buildings that aren't structurally sound begin collapsing. Roofs cave in, walls tumble. The forest grows denser, taller. What was once an urban landscape is becoming wild landscape, dotted with ruins. The ceiba trees, the sacred world trees, grow to enormous size, their roots embracing the buildings, their branches shading what were once plazas. Within a century, the great cities are thoroughly overgrown. Seen from above, if anyone were above to see, they're green jungle, dotted with suspicious mounds and hills that aren't quite natural. The pyramids are earth-covered hills. The palaces are vine-covered lumps. Palenque, Copan, Tikal, Calakmul, all transforming into topography, architectural features becoming geographical features. But the cities aren't completely forgotten, not immediately. Local people know the ruins are there. Some continue making offerings at certain temples, maintaining religious connection to sacred sites. Others avoid the ruins, considering them haunted, dangerous, cursed. Stories are told about the old cities, who built them, why they were abandoned, though with each generation, the stories become more mythological, less historical. The Maya people didn't vanish. This is crucial to understand. The cities were abandoned, but the Maya continued living in the region, just differently. They returned to village-based agriculture, smaller social units, less hierarchical organization. The millions who had lived in and around the great cities dispersed into smaller settlements across the landscape. Life continued, simpler and smaller scale. People farmed their milpa plots, growing maize, beans, squash, the traditional trilogy. They maintained some ceremonial practices, though simplified. Some literacy survived among priests, though the elaborate hieroglyphic system was mostly lost. The sophisticated calendar knowledge, astronomical observations, complex mathematics, much of this was lost, as the institutional infrastructure that supported it disappeared. In the northern Yucatan, civilization continued longer. Chichen Itza rose to prominence in the 9th and 10th centuries, precisely when southern cities were collapsing. Different architectural style, the Puc style, with its elaborate stone mosaics, different building techniques. The culture was changing, mixing with influences from central Mexico, creating something new that was Maya, but also distinct from the classic period civilization. Chichen Itza shows these mixed influences clearly. The famous pyramid El Castillo, the castle, has 9 terraces, classic Maya symbolism, but also shows Toltec influences in its sculptural motifs. The Great Ball Court is the largest in Mesoamerica, suggesting that ballgame ritual remained important. The sacred cenote was used for sacrifices, with offerings including jade, gold, and human remains. Uxmal, another northern city, flourished in the terminal classic and post-classic periods. The Pyramid of the Magician, a unique oval-based pyramid built in 5 stages, dominates the site. The governor's palace features elaborate facade decoration, stone mosaics creating geometric patterns and feathered serpent motifs. The architecture is sophisticated, refined, different from but equal to classic period achievements. But even the northern cities eventually declined. Chichen Itza was largely abandoned by 1200 AD. Mayapan became the dominant power in the north, ruling through a confederation of city-states, but it lacked the cultural sophistication of earlier cities. The trajectory was downward even in regions that escaped the classic period collapse. By 1450, even Mayapan was abandoned after civil war destroyed the confederation. When the Spanish arrived in the early 16th century, they found not a centralized Maya civilization, but a patchwork of small kingdoms, city-states, and independent communities. The Maya had reverted to the political fragmentation that preceded the classic period unification. The great cities were ruins in the jungle, their hieroglyphs unreadable even to contemporary Maya, their builders' names forgotten. The Spanish conquest of the Maya took longer than the conquest of the Aztec or Inca. There was no central capital to capture, no emperor whose defeat meant total victory. Each Maya polity had to be subdued separately. The Spanish established control over the northern Yucatan relatively quickly, but the southern regions, especially the Petén rainforest, resisted for centuries. The last independent Maya kingdom, Tayasal, wasn't conquered until 1697, over 170 years after the Spanish first arrived. The conquest was devastating in ways beyond military defeat. European diseases, smallpox, measles, typhus, swept through Maya populations with no immunity. The population crashed, perhaps by 90% in some areas. This demographic catastrophe was far more destructive than the earlier political collapse. Whole communities were wiped out. Knowledge holders died before they could transmit their knowledge. Cultural continuity was severed. The Spanish deliberately targeted Maya culture. Diego de Landa, the Franciscan bishop, ordered the burning of Maya codices in 1562. He wrote, "We found a large number of books in these characters, and, as they contained nothing in which were not to be seen as superstition and lies of the devil, we burned them all." Hundreds, perhaps thousands of books, astronomical tables, historical records, religious texts, burned in a single auto-da-fe. Ironically, de Landa also wrote the most detailed early account of Maya culture, Relación de las Cosas de Yucatán, Account of the Things of Yucatan, which became crucial for later scholars trying to understand the Maya. He destroyed the books, but he documented what he saw, creating a complex legacy, destroyer and preserver simultaneously. The colonial period was characterized by forced labor, cultural suppression, economic exploitation. Maya people were compelled to work in encomienda systems, were prohibited from practicing traditional religion, were taught Christianity and Spanish. But they also resisted, maintaining traditional practices in secret, blending Maya and Catholic beliefs into syncretic religion, rebelling when oppression became unbearable. The ruins slept in the jungle, largely unknown to the wider world. Some Spanish colonists encountered ruins and reported them, but these accounts weren't widely distributed. The ruins were remote, difficult to reach, in territory not fully controlled. They were curiosities, not systematic archaeological sites. The detailed knowledge of Maya civilization lay buried, literally in the ruins, metaphorically in the unread hieroglyphs. The wind whistled through the abandoned temples, creating eerie sounds, the voice of the stones that would later be romanticized. Rain fell on plazas that once hosted thousands. Animals made homes in palaces where kings once ruled. The jungle's sounds, howler monkeys, tropical birds, insects, replaced human voices. Time passed. Decades became centuries. The Maya civilization receded into memory, then legend, then near mythology. But the stones remained. However overgrown, however damaged, the buildings stood. The hieroglyphs waited, unread but present, preserving history and code. The astronomical alignments persisted. Solstice sunrises still illuminated specific buildings. Equinoxes still created specific shadow patterns. The knowledge was there, dormant, waiting for someone to rediscover it, to read it, to bring the silent stones back to voice. The rediscovery of the Maya began with intrepid explorers hacking through jungle in the 19th century, driven by rumors of lost cities and mysterious ruins. These weren't trained archaeologists. The discipline barely existed yet. But adventurers, diplomats, artists, amateur antiquarians whose accounts would spark global fascination with Maya civilization. John Lloyd Stephens and Frederick Catherwood were the most influential early explorers. Stephens was an American lawyer and travel writer, Catherwood a British artist and architect. Together they made expeditions to Central America in 1839 and 1841, visiting dozens of Maya ruins. Stephens wrote detailed descriptions. Catherwood made precise drawings. Their books, Incidents of Travel in Central America and Incidents of Travel in Yucatan, became bestsellers, introducing Maya civilization to European and American audiences. What made their work significant was that they recognized the ruins as indigenous American achievement. Previous visitors had sometimes attributed the cities to Egyptians, Phoenicians, lost tribes of Israel, anyone except the ancestors of contemporary Maya people. Stevens wrote emphatically that the ruins were built by the Maya, that they represented a sophisticated indigenous civilization. This was revolutionary recognition. Catherwood's drawings were particularly important. He was a skilled artist who tried to render the ruins accurately, including details of hieroglyphs and carvings. Before photography was practical for remote jungle sites, his drawings provided the most reliable visual record. Many of the ruins he drew have since deteriorated or been destroyed, making his work invaluable historical documentation. The early explorations were adventures, dangers from difficult terrain, tropical diseases, political instability in the region. Stevens and Catherwood suffered from malaria, dealt with difficult logistics, navigated uncertain political situations. But they persevered, driven by the romance of discovery and genuine fascination with what they were finding. Other explorers followed. Desire Charnay, a French photographer, documented Maya sites in the 1860s and 1880s, creating some of the earliest photographic records. Alfred Maudslay, a British archaeologist, made careful measurements and photographic records in the 1880s and 1890s. Theobert Mailer explored and photographed dozens of sites in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Each contributed to the growing body of knowledge, but the hieroglyphs remained unreadable. The Maya writing system was a mystery. Some scholars thought the glyphs might be purely decorative or religious symbols, not actual writing. Others attempted decipherment but made little progress. The key was lost. The Maya who could read the hieroglyphs were gone, and no bilingual text like the Rosetta Stone existed to unlock the code. Diego de Landa's account, ironically, provided crucial clues. Despite burning the codices, he had recorded a Maya alphabet, though it wasn't actually an alphabet, as Maya writing combines phonetic and logographic elements. For centuries, this confused more than helped, but it preserved some phonetic values that would eventually prove useful. The breakthrough came in the 20th century through the work of multiple scholars. Yuri Knorozov, a Soviet linguist, argued in the 1950s that Maya writing was phonetic, not purely ideographic. This contradicted prevailing theories and was initially rejected by many Western scholars, partly due to Cold War prejudices against Soviet research. But Knorozov was right. Tatiana Proskoryakov, working in the 1960s, made another crucial breakthrough. She demonstrated that the hieroglyphic texts recorded history, specific dates, specific rulers, specific events, not just religious or astronomical content. She could identify patterns indicating birth, accession to power, death. The texts were readable history, not mystical symbolism. By the 1980s, significant portions of Maya writing could be read. Scholars like Linda Scheel and David Stewart pushed decipherment forward rapidly. Workshops were held where epigraphers shared knowledge, compared interpretations, advanced understanding collaboratively. The pace of progress accelerated. What had been mysterious for centuries was becoming legible within decades. Reading the hieroglyphs transformed understanding of Maya civilization. The anonymous builders became named individuals, kings, queens, scribes, with biographies, accomplishments, personalities emerging from the texts. The warfare, politics, alliances, rivalries became specific, documented history, not speculation. The Maya civilization came alive in ways impossible from architecture and artifacts alone. One spectacular discovery was Tikal's tomb at Palenque, found by Alberto Ruz Lullier in 1952. Inside the Temple of Inscriptions, Ruz found a hidden stairway leading deep into the pyramid. At the bottom was a burial chamber containing an enormous limestone sarcophagus. Inside lay the skeleton of Kinich Janab Tikal,
who died in 683 AD after ruling for 68 years.
The sarcophagus lid shows an elaborate carving of Tikal falling into the jaws of the underworld, positioned on the world tree, surrounded by cosmic symbolism. The richness of the burial, jade mask on Tikal's face, jade jewelry covering his body, offerings including pottery and precious objects, demonstrated the wealth and sophistication of Maya royal culture. Tikal's tomb was compared to Tutankhamun's, a royal burial preserved almost intact, providing unprecedented insight into ancient beliefs about death and the afterlife. The discovery proved that Maya pyramids weren't just platforms for temples, but could be funerary monuments like Egyptian pyramids. It showed the continuity of Maya royal power. Tikal's dynasty ruled Palenque for centuries, carefully documenting their lineage and achievements. Archaeological techniques improved dramatically in the 20th century. Careful excavation replaced early explorers' more destructive methods. Stratigraphy, analyzing layers of soil and artifacts, allowed precise dating. Radiocarbon dating provided absolute dates for organic materials. Scientific analysis of artifacts revealed trade patterns, production techniques, cultural connections. In recent decades, LiDAR, light detection and ranging technology, revolutionized Maya archaeology. Aircraft equipped with LiDAR scanners fly over dense jungle, shooting laser pulses through the canopy and measuring how long they take to bounce back. Computer processing removes the vegetation digitally, revealing the ground surface, including ancient structures invisible to conventional surveys. The results are astonishing. LiDAR surveys have revealed thousands of previously unknown structures: pyramids, palaces, houses, agricultural terraces, roads, defensive walls. The surveys show Maya cities were far larger than previously thought, with more elaborate suburbs and agricultural infrastructure. The total population estimates have been revised upward. The Maya civilization was even more extensive and complex than archaeologists realized. One survey in northern Guatemala revealed over 60,000 previously unknown structures across 2,100 square kilometers. Entire cities that had been invisible, hidden by jungle, suddenly appeared in the LiDAR data. The landscape turned out to be far more modified than anyone suspected. Terraces, drained fields, channels, causeways everywhere. The Maya hadn't lived lightly on the land, but had transformed it extensively. Modern archaeology also involves working with Maya descendants. The Maya people didn't disappear. Roughly 7 million people speak Maya languages today, living primarily in Guatemala, Mexico, and Belize. They maintain cultural continuity with their ancestors, preserving traditions, language, stories, knowledge that helps archaeologists understand the ancient civilization. Some Maya communities are directly involved in archaeological projects, working as laborers, guides, consultants. There's increasing recognition that the Maya heritage belongs to Maya people, not just to international researchers and tourists. Cultural patrimony laws restrict removing artifacts from countries. Museums are beginning to repatriate some materials. The power dynamics of who studies and controls Maya heritage are slowly shifting. The understanding now is that Maya collapse is partial. The political system collapsed, the cities were abandoned, but the Maya people continued. Their culture transformed but persisted. The Spanish conquest was devastating but didn't eliminate Maya identity. The pressures of modernity threaten traditional cultures, but Maya languages are still spoken, traditional practices still performed, cultural identity still strong. This recognition changes how we tell the Maya story. It's not a tale of mysterious lost civilization, but of continuous cultural tradition, albeit with catastrophic disruptions. The ruins aren't just archaeological sites, but ancestors' homes, sacred places, cultural heritage. The hieroglyphs record not mysterious aliens, but actual Maya history. The living Maya are connected to the ancient Maya through unbroken lineage. The rediscovery is ongoing. Each archaeological season brings new findings. Each epigraphic breakthrough reveals new history. Each application of new technology, ground-penetrating radar, DNA analysis, isotope studies, adds details. The Maya civilization that seemed so mysterious a century ago is increasingly understood, its history readable, its achievements recognized. But mysteries remain. Some hieroglyphs are still undeciphered. Some aspects of Maya culture are poorly understood. The exact causes of the classic period collapse are still debated. The extent of Maya knowledge in astronomy, mathematics, and other fields is still being discovered. There's still work for future generations of researchers, still secrets buried in jungle, still voices waiting to speak from stone. What does the Maya civilization teach us, looking back across the centuries? The lessons are complex, sometimes contradictory, always profound. This isn't just ancient history. It's a mirror showing us ourselves, our vulnerabilities, our capabilities, our relationship with environment and each other. The first lesson is about environmental limits. The Maya built a sophisticated civilization in challenging conditions: tropical rainforest with seasonal droughts, thin soils, no major rivers. They succeeded for centuries through innovation, hard work, sophisticated agricultural techniques. But eventually, they pushed beyond sustainable limits. Population grew too large for the resource base. The environment was degraded faster than it could regenerate. The result was collapse. This lesson feels urgently relevant today. We're pushing environmental limits globally. Climate change, deforestation, soil degradation, water depletion, biodiversity loss. The Maya didn't have scientific understanding of ecology, couldn't predict the long-term consequences of their actions. We do have that knowledge. Yet we continue degrading our environment. The Maya show what happens when civilizations exceed carrying capacity. The outcome isn't pretty. But the lesson isn't just doom and gloom. It's also about resilience. The Maya civilization collapsed, but the Maya people survived. They adapted to changed circumstances, maintained cultural identity through conquest and oppression, preserved language and traditions across centuries. Civilizations are fragile, but cultures can be remarkably resilient. The second lesson is about the value and vulnerability of knowledge. The Maya accumulated sophisticated understanding: astronomy, mathematics, calendrical science, architectural engineering, agricultural techniques. This knowledge was preserved institutionally, in books, in carved monuments, in training systems passing knowledge from generation to generation. When the classic period cities collapsed, much knowledge was lost. When the Spanish burned the codices, more was lost. The institutional structures supporting knowledge preservation disintegrated. What remained was fragments, scattered pieces that later scholars had to laboriously reconstruct. The lesson: knowledge is precious but fragile. Without institutions to preserve and transmit it, even sophisticated understanding can disappear within generations. This has modern parallels: libraries, universities, research institutions, publishing systems. These preserve and transmit knowledge. When these systems fail, through war, economic collapse, political suppression, knowledge is lost. The burning of Maya codices was deliberate cultural destruction. But knowledge can also be lost through neglect, through prioritizing other things, through assuming it will always be available. The third lesson is about the relationship between ideology and power. Maya kingship was justified through elaborate theological worldview, the king as semi-divine, his rituals maintaining cosmic order, his authority sanctioned by gods. This ideology was expressed through architecture, art, ritual, writing. It was powerful, convincing, effective at organizing society and legitimizing hierarchy. But ideology is only as strong as the material benefits it produces. When kings couldn't bring rain, when crops failed despite rituals, when cosmic order didn't seem to be working, the ideology lost credibility. People stopped believing, stopped obeying, stopped building monuments. The elaborate theological justification for royal power crumbled when it failed to deliver practical results. Modern parallels are obvious. Every political system justifies itself through ideology, democracy, communism, nationalism, religious authority, whatever. The ideologies are convincing when they deliver prosperity, security, justice. When they fail to deliver, they lose legitimacy. The Maya show how even deeply embedded ideologies can collapse rapidly when circumstances change. The fourth lesson is about civilization's cost. The magnificent pyramids, elaborate art, sophisticated knowledge, these came at a price. The price was paid by farmers whose labor supported the elite, by captives sacrificed to gods, by the environment degraded to support urban populations, by conquered peoples subjugated to more powerful cities. We romanticize ancient civilizations, admiring their achievements while overlooking their violence and exploitation. The Maya pyramids are beautiful, but they were built through hierarchical social systems where most people had no choice in their labor. The art is impressive, but some depicts brutal warfare and human sacrifice. The knowledge is sophisticated, but it was restricted to elite who used it to maintain power over illiterate masses. This doesn't mean dismissing Maya achievements. They're genuine accomplishments deserving recognition. But it means acknowledging that civilization has always involved trade-offs, costs and benefits unequally distributed. The Maya are neither noble savages living in ecological harmony, nor bloodthirsty primitives obsessed with violence. They're humans, creating impressive culture while also capable of cruelty, building beauty while causing suffering. The fifth lesson is about the power of art and architecture to communicate across time. We can't speak with ancient Maya, can't ask them what they thought, what they valued, what they believed. But their architecture and art communicate across centuries. The pyramids reaching toward heaven tell us about their cosmology. The carved monuments tell us about their politics. The astronomical alignments tell us about their understanding of the universe. Art isn't just decoration, it's communication, memory, meaning made permanent. The Maya created art that would outlast them, that would speak to people they'd never meet, that would preserve their worldview for posterity. They succeeded. We can read their values in their carvings, understand their beliefs through their architecture, connect with their humanity through their art. This is art's ultimate purpose: connection across time and space, communication of what matters most, preservation of human experience for those who come after. The Maya took this seriously, creating art not just for their own time, but for eternity. The fact that we can still read their messages centuries later proves the power of art to transcend mortality. The sixth lesson is about the complexity of collapse. The classic Maya collapse has been blamed on drought, on warfare, on environmental degradation, on political instability, on social unrest, on trade disruption, on disease. The reality is probably all of these, interacting, reinforcing each other, creating systemic failure no single factor can explain. Complex societies have many interdependent parts. When multiple systems stress simultaneously, collapse can happen rapidly and thoroughly.
The Maya couldn't fix climate,
stop warfare, restore forests, and reform politics all at once. The problems overwhelmed their ability to respond. The civilization collapsed not from one blow, but from accumulated stresses it couldn't overcome. Modern industrial civilization is similarly complex, similarly vulnerable to systemic stress. Climate change, environmental degradation, political instability, economic inequality, technological disruption. These aren't separate problems, but interconnected challenges. The Maya show how quickly sophisticated civilizations can collapse when facing multiple simultaneous stresses. The warning is clear. The seventh lesson is about cultural continuity and change. The classic Maya civilization collapsed, but Maya culture didn't end. It transformed, adapted, persisted. The Spanish conquest was devastating, but Maya people survived. Their languages are still spoken, their traditions are still practiced, their identity persists. Cultures are resilient in ways political systems aren't. Empires fall, cities are abandoned, civilizations collapse. But the people continue, maintaining core cultural identity while adapting to new circumstances. The Maya have survived multiple catastrophes across centuries. Their cultural continuity testifies to human resilience and adaptability. The eighth lesson is about the dangers of certainty. The classic Maya seemed certain about their worldview, the divine kingship, the necessity of sacrifice, the calendrical systems, the cosmic order. They built massive monuments to these certainties, organized entire societies around them. Then the system failed. The certainties proved uncertain, and the civilization collapsed. Certainty is dangerous. The Maya would have been better served by flexibility, by questioning, by adapting their worldview when it stopped working. Instead, they doubled down on failing strategies, built more monuments, performed more rituals, maintained systems that no longer functioned. Rigidity contributed to their collapse. Modern societies face similar dangers. We're certain about many things: economic theories, political ideologies, technological solutions. When these certainties fail, we often intensify commitment rather than questioning assumptions. The Maya show where this leads. Adaptive societies that can change their minds when evidence changes are more likely to survive than rigid societies committed to failing certainties. The final lesson is about humility. The Maya built impressive civilization, magnificent architecture, sophisticated knowledge, complex culture. But it wasn't permanent. It collapsed, was forgotten, was reclaimed by jungle. The great cities became ruins. The elaborate knowledge system was mostly lost. The powerful dynasties ended in abandonment and silence. If Maya civilization, so impressive, so sophisticated, so confident, could collapse and be forgotten, so can ours. Nothing human is permanent. Every achievement is temporary. Every civilization eventually falls. This isn't pessimism, it's realism. Recognizing our impermanence doesn't negate our achievements. It contextualizes them, gives perspective, encourages us to make our temporary time meaningful, rather than assuming permanence that doesn't exist. The Maya built for eternity, but achieved only centuries. That's still impressive. Their monuments stand after a millennium. Their knowledge is being recovered. Their legacy persists. They matter, not because they were permanent, but because they achieved greatly while they existed. That's the best any of us can hope for. To create meaning in our time, knowing it won't last forever. building beauty that might outlast us, even if it can't last eternally. Now, as evening deepens and you prepare for sleep, let me take you to the ruins one final time. Not as a tourist site or archaeological puzzle, but as a place of memory and meaning, where stone and silence speak of all that was and all that remains. Picture Tikal at twilight. The last tourists have left, guided down from the pyramids before darkness makes the steep stairs dangerous. The archaeologists have returned to their camp. The guards are beginning their night rounds. The site is emptying of modern people, returning to the forest, to the night, to something closer to what it was during the centuries of abandonment. The sun sets behind the pyramids, painting the sky orange and purple. The howler monkeys begin their evening chorus, a sound like thunder, like wind through canyons, echoing across the ruins. This is the same sound that filled these forests during Maya times, when the cities were alive. The same sound that continued during the abandonment, when the jungle reclaimed the stones. A sound connecting past and present through biological continuity. The light fades gradually. The gray limestone of the pyramids turns gold, then amber, then purple in the changing light. Shadows lengthen across the plazas. The intricate carvings become harder to see, their details disappearing into shadow, becoming suggestions rather than clear images. The ruins are transforming from historical record to atmospheric presence, from documented past to imagined memory. As darkness arrives, the stars appear. The same stars the Maya observed, calculated, predicted with such precision. The Milky Way arcs across the sky. The Maya called it the White Road, saw it as the path souls traveled to the underworld. The constellations the Maya knew by different names than ours still wheel through their ancient patterns, unchanged by human dramas played out beneath them. In the darkness, the ruins are less visible, but somehow more present. Your imagination fills the spaces. You can almost see the plazas filled with people, the pyramids topped with smoking incense burners, the torches lighting processions, the ceremonies that once gave these stones purpose. The silence is full of ghost sounds, drums, chants, the ball striking the court wall, the king's proclamation echoing across the plaza. The forest at night is alive with sounds. Insects chorus at incredible volume. Night birds call. Bats hunt, their echolocation too high-pitched for human ears, but their presence felt as they swoop through the ruins. Something larger moves through underbrush, maybe a peccary, maybe a jaguar, continuing the eternal business of life while the ruins stand silent witness. Mist rises from the forest floor, created by the temperature differential between warm earth and cooling air. The mist drifts through the ruins, making them seem even more dreamlike, less solid. The pyramids disappear and reappear as mist swirls past. The boundary between stone and air, between past and present, becomes uncertain, permeable, mysterious. Your breathing slows to match the forest's rhythm. In, out. Deep, slow, peaceful. The day's activities fade from mind. The tourist crowds, the camera clicks, the modern world, all receding, becoming less real, less urgent. What remains is the ancient place, the stones that have stood for over a millennium, the presence of deep time. The pyramids in darkness aren't frightening. They're comforting in their way. These stones have witnessed so much. The glory of the classic period, the pain of collapse, the silence of abandonment, the excitement of rediscovery. They've survived jungle growth, tropical storms, the passing of centuries. They endure. This endurance is reassuring. If these stones can stand through such changes, perhaps there's hope for all of us. You imagine climbing one of the pyramids in darkness, carefully, feeling each steep step, using hands as much as feet. The climb is physical meditation, each step requiring attention, presence, focus. No room for distraction when one misstep could be dangerous. You're fully here, fully now, connected to the stone beneath your hands and feet. At the top, the view opens. Above, the stars in their billions. Below, the forest canopy broken by the dark shapes of other pyramids. The horizon in all directions. The wind moving freely here above the trees. This is where Maya kings stood, where priests performed ceremonies, where astronomers made observations. You're connected to them through this place, this experience of height and sky and stone. The understanding comes wordlessly. These people, the Maya who built this, were humans like you. They felt cold and heat, hunger and satisfaction, fear and joy. They loved their children, mourned their dead, hoped for better futures. They built these mountains of stone because they needed meaning, needed to connect with something larger than their individual lives, needed to create something that would outlast them. And they succeeded. 1,000 years after the cities were abandoned, the pyramids still stand. The carvings still tell their stories. The astronomical alignments still mark the solstices. What the Maya built has outlasted them by centuries. The individuals are gone, but their collective achievement remains, speaking to people they never imagined, in times they couldn't predict. This is why humans create. Not because it will last forever, nothing does, but because the act of creation itself is meaningful. Because leaving something behind matters. Because connection across time is possible through what we build and make. The Maya understood this. They built not for their own lifetime, but for eternity, knowing full well that eternity is impossible, but worth attempting anyway. Your eyes are heavy now. The darkness is complete. The stars are brilliant. The forest breathes around you. The stones hold their stories. Everything is as it should be. There's deep peace in this place, in this moment, in the presence of ancient achievements and ongoing nature and the eternal stars above. You descend in imagination from the pyramid, carefully, slowly, returning to ground level. The plaza beneath your feet is the same plaza with thousands once gathered. The stones you walk on were placed by hands a millennium dead. But the stones are still here. The place is still here. The connection is real. You find a sheltered spot, perhaps in a doorway of one of the palace buildings, perhaps against the wall in a small courtyard. Somewhere out of the breeze, protected, quiet. You settle into position, back against ancient stone, looking up at stars through tree branches. This is where you'll rest. The stone against your back is slightly warm, holding the day's heat. Or perhaps it's just imagination. But it feels like the stone is cradling you, supporting you, protecting you. These walls have sheltered people before. Maya people sleeping in these same spaces 1,000 years ago. Then forest animals making homes here during the abandonment. Now you, briefly, connecting across time through the simple act of resting against ancient stone. Your thoughts slow, become dreamlike, less linear. Images drift past, pyramids rising in construction, cities filled with life, then empty, then covered with jungle, then rediscovered, then alive again with tourists and archaeologists. The cycle of presence and absence, building and decay, memory and forgetting. Everything in flux except the underlying stone, enduring through it all. The last conscious thought is gratitude for being here, in this place where so much history lives in stone. For the Maya who built these wonders, for the forest that preserved them, for the archaeologists who revealed them, for the privilege of witnessing, however briefly, the legacy of human ambition and achievement and faith carved into mountains of stone. Then even gratitude fades, only sleep remains. Deep, peaceful, dreamless sleep. The sleep of stones, the sleep of centuries, the sleep that knows no time, no worry, no separation between past and present. The ruins stand in darkness, patient and eternal. The forest continues its eternal business of growth and decay. The stars wheel overhead in their mathematical precision. And you sleep, temporary and human, but connected in this moment to something much larger and older than yourself. Sleep peacefully. The pyramids watch over you. The stones remember. The forest breathes. And all is well. Rest now. Rest deeply. The ancient Maya dreamed here. Now you dream. The connection continues. The story lives on. Only peace. Only stillness. Only the gentle darkness of forest night and stone memory. In the final stillness of night, the Maya ruins rest under stars. But this isn't ending, it's continuation. Because the Maya story didn't end with the Classic period collapse, or the Spanish conquest, or the centuries of jungle growth. The story continues, living and evolving in ways the ancient builders couldn't have imagined. 7 million people speak Maya languages today. Not Latin, not Sanskrit, not some dead language preserved only in texts. Living languages, spoken daily, evolving, adapting, carrying forward the linguistic heritage of the ancient Maya. The words for sun and rain, for maize and child, for love and death. These words connect modern speakers directly to their ancestors who built the pyramids. Maya communities throughout Guatemala, Mexico, Belize practice traditions with roots in ancient culture. The agricultural calendar still follows patterns established centuries ago. Ceremonies honoring earth and sky gods continue, sometimes blended with Catholicism, creating syncretic religion that is uniquely Maya. The identity persists, adapts, survives. This is what the ruins ultimately teach. Not endings, but continuity. The cities fell, but the culture continued. The hieroglyphic writing was forgotten, but the languages survived. The great pyramids were abandoned, but the people persisted. Resilience is written in the survival of Maya culture across centuries of catastrophe and oppression. The archaeological work continues too. Each season brings new discoveries. Recently, LiDAR surveys revealed thousands of structures invisible from ground level. Who knows what else remains hidden beneath the jungle canopy, waiting for technology to reveal it. The Maya civilization we know now is more extensive than we thought even a decade ago. Future discoveries will probably reveal even more. The hieroglyphic decipherment isn't complete. Some glyphs remain mysterious. Some texts are too damaged to read. But progress continues, with each breakthrough revealing new details about Maya history, religion, politics, daily life. The stones are still speaking, still sharing secrets, still teaching us about the civilization that created them. The environmental lessons from Maya collapse are increasingly relevant. Climate change threatening modern civilization echoes the droughts that stressed classic Maya society. Our deforestation mirrors theirs. Our resource overuse parallels their environmental degradation. The Maya show what happens when civilizations push beyond sustainable limits. We should be paying attention. But the Maya also show resilience and adaptation. When the classic period system failed, the Maya didn't vanish. They adapted, found new ways to live, maintained core cultural identity while changing other aspects. This adaptive capacity is what allowed them to survive conquest, colonialism, continuing pressure. It's a lesson in resilience that feels urgent in our age of rapid change. The tourism to Maya sites serves multiple purposes. Yes, it's economic activity for the regions, but it's also cultural education, connecting people worldwide with Maya heritage. Millions visit Chichen Itza, Tikal, Palenque, Uxmal annually, learning about Maya civilization, feeling awe at the architectural achievements, gaining perspective on human capability and vulnerability. For Maya descendants, the sites are sacred heritage, ancestral homes, proof of their civilization's achievements. The pride Maya people take in their ancestors' accomplishments is palpable and justified. The ruins aren't just tourist attractions. They're family history, cultural roots, tangible connection to a magnificent past. The management of these sites involves complex negotiations, preservation versus access, how many tourists can sites handle without damage, local economic benefit versus archaeological protection, how to balance community needs with conservation, indigenous rights versus national and international interests, who ultimately controls Maya heritage. These aren't simple questions, but they're being addressed more thoughtfully than in the past. Maya communities are increasingly involved in site management. Tourism revenue is being shared more equitably. Cultural protocols are being respected. The conversation about whose heritage this is and how it should be managed is becoming more inclusive. The scholarship about the Maya is also changing. Early researchers often portrayed the Maya as mysterious, exotic, fundamentally different from modern people. Current scholarship emphasizes the Maya as humans, facing similar challenges, making similar decisions, succeeding and failing in recognizable ways. This humanization is more respectful and more accurate than romantic exoticization. The artistic influence of Maya culture extends worldwide. Maya motifs appear in architecture, graphic design, literature, film. The 2012 phenomenon, the supposed Maya calendar prediction of apocalypse, was based on misunderstanding, but it showed how Maya culture captures global imagination. The actual Maya calendrical sophistication deserves recognition without the New Age mysticism. The mathematical and astronomical achievements are increasingly appreciated. The independent invention of zero, the accurate prediction of eclipses, the calendrical precision. These aren't primitive superstitions, but genuine scientific achievements that advanced human understanding. The Maya made real contributions to human knowledge, deserving recognition alongside other great scientific cultures. The art continues to inspire. The intricate carvings, the sophisticated compositions, the technical mastery. Maya art ranks among humanity's great aesthetic achievements. Museums worldwide display Maya art, introducing millions to the culture's artistic excellence. The beauty created a millennium ago still moves people today, proving that aesthetic achievement transcends time and culture. As you drift into final sleep, imagine the continuum. The ancient Maya building their pyramids, encoding their knowledge in stone and stars. The classic period, flourishing, then collapsing, the cities abandoned to jungle. The Spanish conquest, disrupting but not destroying Maya culture. The rediscovery, revealing the ruins. The scholarship, deciphering the hieroglyphs. The modern Maya, maintaining their heritage. The tourists, connecting with ancient achievements. The ongoing research, revealing new discoveries. It's all one story. A story of human ambition and vulnerability, achievement and catastrophe, endings and continuations. The Maya built monuments that would outlast them, and they succeeded. The pyramids still stand. The carvings still tell stories. The knowledge is being recovered. The culture persists. The legacy lives. What matters isn't that the classic Maya civilization collapsed. What matters is that they achieved so much during their flourishing, that their achievements still inspire us, that they proved humans could create magnificence in challenging conditions, that they left monuments teaching lessons we desperately need to learn. The ruins in darkness, the forest sounds, the ancient stones, the persistent stars. All are still there as your consciousness fades into sleep. They'll be there tomorrow, and the day after, and for years to come. The stones are patient. The forest is eternal. The legacy endures. Sleep now, connected across time to the Maya who slept in these forests, who dreamed under these stars, who built monuments reaching toward heaven, who faced catastrophe with courage, who survived and adapted and persisted. Their story is human story. Their achievements are human achievements. Their resilience is human resilience. The pyramids stand in darkness, testimony to human capability. The carvings preserve knowledge, proof that wisdom can outlast those who possess it. The survival of Maya culture demonstrates that people are stronger than the systems they create, that cultural identity persists when political structures fail. You're part of this continuum now. You've learned the story, felt the connection, understood the lessons. The Maya built monuments that would speak across centuries, and you've heard them speaking. The stones that were silent are silent no more. The voices of the past echo in your understanding, in your dreams, in the knowledge you'll carry forward. Rest peacefully under stars the Maya charted, in forests they knew, near stones they carved. You're connected now across a millennium, linked by shared humanity, by the universal questions all cultures ask, by the persistent human need to create meaning in temporary existence. The Maya answered those questions with pyramids and mathematics, with art and astronomy, with cities that reached toward gods, and knowledge that reached toward truth. They succeeded magnificently. They failed tragically. They endured ultimately. Their story continues in every person who learns it, who is moved by it, who carries it forward. Sleep deeply. Dream of stone mountains rising from jungle. Dream of carved histories speaking across time. Dream of stars wheeled in mathematical precision. Dream of resilience and persistence and the endless human capacity to create meaning from stone and stars and the brief moments we're given. The Maya civilization in its classic form is gone, but Maya people continue. Maya languages are spoken. Maya sites inspire millions. Maya knowledge enriches humanity.
The story doesn't end. It transforms, continues, lives on.
And you sleep, carrying this story now, connected to the ancient builders, the persistent culture, the enduring legacy. The echo of Maya civilization reverberates through time, touching everyone who hears it, teaching everyone who listens. The stones speak, the forest breathes, the stars watch. And you rest, held by the same earth that holds the ruins, looked down on by the same sky that witnessed the civilization's rise and fall and persistence. Only peace now, only sleep, only the gentle darkness where ancient voices whisper their wisdom across the centuries. Good night. Sleep well. The Maya legacy watches over you. Rest in the knowledge that some things, love, beauty, knowledge, cultural identity, persist despite all catastrophes. The story continues. The echo never dies. Sleep peacefully. Good night.